Picture the first rays of dawn spilling over a rugged horizon, bathing the limestone cliffs in a warm glow of gold and amber. A small band of humans steps from the shadowed mouth of a cave, their breath misting in the crisp morning air. Some scan the vast plains, eyes sharp for the flicker of game, while others kneel by the smoldering embers of last night's fire, coaxing it back to life with kindling gathered from the sparse scrub. These are not the fur-clad brutes of old cartoons, dragging clubs and grunting. No, these are our Paleolithic ancestors, resourceful, adaptable, and woven into the rhythms of a wild world. Their days were a dance of survival, ingenuity, and connection, played out across a stage that spans over 99% of human history, from 2.6 million years ago to about 12,000 years ago. What did they do all day? How did they fill the hours when every moment was a negotiation with an untamed earth? Let's step into their lives not as distant observers, but as curious companions, eager to feel the pulse of their existence. The Paleolithic period is a vast tapestry, stretching across millions of years and countless landscapes. Sun-scorched savannas of Africa, frost-bitten steppes of Ice Age Europe, lush coastal shores. These people were not frozen in some primitive mold. Their world pulsed with innovation, from stone tools chipped with precision to cave walls, alive with art that still takes our breath away. To know their days, we piece together a mosaic of evidence: flint blades, hearths cradling ancient flames, bones marked by feasts, and paintings that whisper stories of bison and hunters. Ethnographic studies of modern hunter-gatherers offer a window, though we tread lightly, knowing time shifts the details. The Paleolithic was not one life but many, shaped by climate, land, and the slow march of millennia. A Homo habilis scavenging in East Africa 2 million years ago walked a different path from a Cro-Magnon brushing ochre onto a French cave 20,000 years ago. Yet they shared a truth. They were hunter-gatherers, bound to the land's creatures and seasons. Imagine a morning with this band. The sun climbs, and the world stirs. Unlike our lives tethered to clocks and electric lights, these people moved with the earth's rhythm. Their day began with the fire, a sacred, constant presence. At sites like Terra Amata in France, 380,000 years old, hearths were tended with care, embers guarded through the night to spare the labor of sparking a new flame. Fire was warmth, a shield against predators, a tool to unlock the nourishment of raw meat and tough roots. Morning saw hands fanning embers, feeding dry twigs until flames danced again. Others slipped to a nearby stream, carrying water in woven baskets or animal bladders, steps careful to preserve every drop. These were not mere chores, but acts of survival, woven into the day's fabric. As light strengthened, the band took stock. Was their store of dried meat and nuts dwindling? Were flint blades dulled from yesterday's hunt? Had a scout spotted deer tracks? These questions shaped their actions, not in rigid schedules, but in a fluid rhythm of need and foresight. Sites like Gesher Beno Yaakov in Israel, nearly 800,000 years old, reveal people who knew the land's calendar, harvesting nuts and fruits at their peak. This was no aimless wandering but a life of calculated movement, reading the earth like a book of hoofprints and broken branches. Their work was molded by the land. In the Ice Age's grip, survival meant tracking mammoths across frozen plains bundled in furs. Near coasts, groups wove nets to pull fish from rivers, as seen at Kubi Fora in Kenya. In forests, they hunted smaller game and gathered abundant plants. Food was their heartbeat, and acquiring it demanded skill, patience, and unity. Men often stalked large game, wielding spears that, by 400,000 years ago at Schöningen in Germany, were balanced like fine instruments. Women were the backbone of gathering. Their knowledge of roots, berries, and healing plants, a lifeline when hunts failed. Yet roles flexed. Women joined hunts, men gathered, the group's survival trumping tradition. By midday, they might pause to prepare food or sharpen tools. The sun's heat could call for rest, a moment to chew dried meat or crush seeds in the shade. As evening neared, they gathered around the fire. Hunters returned, perhaps with a deer slung across their shoulders, or empty-handed, faces etched with the day's toil. Gatherers brought baskets of tubers and fruits, their haul a testament to their land's secrets. The fire became a hearth of stories, where laughter and plans mingled, and the act of sharing a meal tightened the bonds that held them close. This was not just survival, but a life rich with connection, a rhythm that carried them through the day and into the tasks that defined their world. The fire's glow lingers as we follow this band deeper into their daily rhythm, a cadence of action and adaptation. Picture them now, 20 or 30 souls, men, women, children, moving through grasslands or dense woods. Their days were not a grind, but a weave of urgent tasks and long-term plans, effort blended with mastery. The fire remained their anchor, its embers a lifeline. At Terra Amata, hearths were not random but placed with care, shielding against wind while warming the group. Keeping a fire alive was no small feat. Starting one with flint and tinder could take hours, so embers were carried in hollowed bones or wrapped leaves, tended like a fragile child. Morning often began with this ritual, hands coaxing flames from the night's remains, setting the day's tempo. Water was another constant. A stream or spring was a lifeline, and the band's movements orbited these sources. Containers were clever. Bladders, tightly woven baskets, or later, pottery that emerged around 20,000 years ago in China. Carrying water was shared work, children learning to balance a sloshing load. With basics secured, the band turned to food. Hunting was the most vivid pursuit, a gamble that could yield a feast or leave them hungry. By 500,000 years ago, at Box Grove in England, they were not scavengers but skilled hunters, spears piercing horse and deer. These hunts demanded teamwork, tracking, ambushing, striking as one. The Schöningen spears, 400,000 years old, were crafted with an engineer's eye, balanced for throwing with deadly precision. Yet hunting was only half the tale. Gathering plants was the diet's foundation, a task requiring a botanist's knowledge. Women, often joined by men and children, fanned across the terrain, spotting edible roots, ripe berries, or nutrient-rich seeds. Dental calculus from their teeth reveals a vast menu. Tubers, nuts, greens, even medicinal plants like willow, nature's aspirin. This was a science, built on generations of watching the land. At Gesher B'nai Yaakov, seasonal harvests of nuts and fruits show a people who knew when to return to a grove, their movements a dance with the earth's cycles. Midday brought a pause to process the day's haul. Grinding stones turned seeds to meal, flint blades sliced meat or peeled tubers. Cooking, mastered at least 400,000 years ago, transformed the raw into nourishment. Fire softened fibers, killed parasites, and unlocked calories, fueling body and brain. Cooking was communal, the group sharing labor and meal around large hearths, like those at Cavemen Cave in Israel. This was also tool sharpening time. A flint blade dulled fast, but a skilled knapper could renew it in minutes, striking flakes with practiced ease. Complex tools, like spear points or bone needles, took hours, hands guided by stone and bone secrets. As daylight faded, the hearth drew them close. Hunters returned, their success or failure shaping the mood. A deer meant a feast, meat roasted, fat sizzling in the flames, filling the air with rich scent. Gatherers added berries or starchy roots, the meal a celebration of the day's work. Firelight fostered intimacy, a space for stories of cunning foxes or endured storms. These tales were lessons, teaching children the land's ways. The seasons shaped their tasks as much as the hours. Spring brought greens and eggs, summer berries and young game, autumn nuts and winter prep, winter stored foods and snowbound hunts. Storage was vital, jerky, buried roots, frozen caches in cold lands. Their diet's diversity, seen in robust bones, shielded them from scarcity, unlike later farmers. Shelters were another labor. Caves were rare, often seasonal. More common were built homes, wooden huts at Terra Amata, or mammoth bone structures at Medjugorje, draped with hides. Inside, hearths centered spaces for sleeping, tool-making, cooking. Maintenance was constant, repairing hides, reinforcing posts, clearing refuse. Clothing was a craft, hide scraped and sewn with bone needles, tailored for Ice Age cold. Children learned by doing, mimicking adults, as they chipped flint or wove baskets. Hygiene, though less visible, likely mirrored modern hunter-gatherers, bathing, cleaning teeth with plants. Care for the sick or injured showed their heart, with skeletons bearing healed fractures, proof of a group that carried its own. Their day was labor and connection, the fire a symbol of resilience, drawing them together against the dark. This rhythm of work and community flowed into the very essence of their survival, the quest for food that pulsed through every moment. The scent of roasted meat fades, but the band's life hums on, its heartbeat the pursuit of food. To know them, we must trace this journey, from the hunt's thrill to the quiet expertise of gathering. Hunting was a test of nerve and unity. At Box Grove, 500,000 years ago, they were no mere scavengers. Spears left wounds in horse bones, proof of planned hunts. These were group efforts, trackers reading faint signs, hoofprints, broken twigs, a distant bellow. Tools evolved with their skill. Shoningen spears, 400,000 years old, were balanced for flight, tips fire-hardened. By 30,000 years ago, spear throwers boosted power, and bows emerging 20,000 years ago brought precision. Yet, hunts often failed, leaving the group to lean on gathering's steadier hand. Gathering was the diet's bedrock. Plants, tubers, berries, nuts, seeds, greens, fed them most. This demanded vast knowledge, a living map of the land's gifts. At Gesher Bino Yahakoth, nut and fruit harvests show they knew the seasons, returning to groves at the right moment. Dental calculus reveals dozens of plants, from starchy roots to healing herbs. Women, often the gatherers, were botanists, knowing edible from toxic, how to process bitter leaves or tough roots. Children helped, plucking berries or digging tubers, learning the land's secrets. Eating was a transformation, cooking it sparked. Fire, tamed 400,000 years ago, softened fibers, killed toxins, and freed calories. Roasting meat or boiling roots in hide pits made food fuel for brain and body. Large hearths, like at Kizem Cave, hint at shared feasts. Preparation was a craft, grinding stones for seeds, pounding tools for roots, blades for butchery. Stone tools could carve an elephant, though it took hours of teamwork. Storage was born of need. Seasons were harsh, and foresight saved them. Jerky dried in the sun, roots buried in cool pits, frozen caches in cold lands. Fishing, seen in nets and bone hooks at Kubifora, added protein. Their diet's balance shone in strong bones, outshone later farmers' meager fare. Tools for food were as varied as the foods. Stone blades butchered or peeled. Wooden spears struck game. Bone hooks snared fish. Containers evolved. Gourds, shells, bladders, then baskets and pottery. These were answers to the land's demands, each a step in mastery. Seasons set the rhythm. Spring's shoots and eggs. Summer's berries and young game. Autumn's nuts, winter's stores and hunts. This cycle demanded movement, following herds or groves, and planning when to harvest, move, store. They were not victims but shapers, their movements a dance with the earth. Food was social glue. Sharing meals built bonds, large hearths at dolny viestanas, suggesting feasts with neighbors. These were moments of trust, stories, and alliance. Sharing created debts, a web holding the group tight. Even in scarcity, the weak were fed, their care a mark of unity. Their diet was a triumph of knowledge, tools crafted with precision, techniques honed over generations, and a group's strength. To eat was to know the land, respect its limits, and weave a story of resilience in every bite, a story that shaped the tools and homes they built. The crunch of a tuber gives way to the clink of flint, the sound of a world being shaped. The Paleolithic was a workshop, where tools, shelters, and clothing were not objects, but extensions of mind and hand. Picture the band now, scattered across a clearing. Some chip stone, others weave reeds, a few stitch hides by the fire. Tool-making was a constant pulse, as vital as breath. A flint knapper could shape a blade in minutes, striking flakes with a surgeon's precision. Complex tools, like Upper Paleolithic spear points, took hours, each strike guided by the stone's grain and fracture. Tools tell a story of mastery. Early cobbles, 2.6 million years old, were crude, but effective. By 1.76 million years, Acheulean hand axes showed symmetry, a leap in craft. The Middle Paleolithic's Levallois technique controlled flake shape, while the Upper Paleolithic 50,000 years ago birthed specialized tools, burins for engraving, scrapers for hides, awls for piercing, points for hunting. These were born of deep knowledge, refined over time. Wood, though rarely preserved, was key. Schoningen spears or Clacton seas spear tips show careful shaping. Bone and antler, strong yet flexible, became fishhooks, needles, harpoons. Ivory carved into beads hinted at beauty beyond use. Shelters were ingenuity's proof. Caves like Lascaux were rare, often seasonal. More common were built homes, terra amatas wooden huts or Magiresh's mammoth bone structures, hide-draped. Inside, hearths centered spaces for sleeping, tool-making, cooking. Maintenance was endless, repairing hides, reinforcing posts, clearing refuse. Clothing was a technology for cold. Hides, scraped with stone, sewn with bone needles, were tailored some 40,000 years old. In warmth, simple coverings sufficed, but in ice ages, furs were life. Containers were vital, gourds, shells, bladders, then baskets, and pottery, by 20,000 years ago, in China d. These were not just tools, but resourcefulness, turning nature into survival. Crafting demanded knowledge, stone's fracture, wood's grain, bone's strength. Building a shelter meant understanding wind and weight. Sewing needed hide preparation and sinew threading. This was taught through practice, children guided by elders as they chipped flint or wove reeds. Every member was a craftsman, their skills shared for survival. Tool-making and building were communal. A napper taught a child the strike's angle, a group raised a shelter. These were not just tasks but identity. tools and homes reflecting resilience. To hold their spear or step into their hut is to feel their knowledge, hands and minds in harmony with the world, a harmony that wove their society and culture. The clink of flint fades into the crackle of the fire, where the band gathers as night falls. The Paleolithic was humanity's crucible, where creativity, unity, and resilience were born. Their social life was their strength, a web of bonds as vital as food or fire. The band, 20 to 30 souls, often kin, moved, worked, lived as one. But they were not alone. Exotic materials, found far from their source, showed trade networks spanning hundreds of miles, linking bands in exchange and alliance. Sharing was their heart. Food, precious and hard-won, was divided, building reciprocity. Large hearths at Dolny Vestanis, 29,000 years ago, suggest feasts with neighbors, moments of laughter and trust. Art bound them too. Lascaux paintings or Altamira's bison were communal, perhaps ritual. Figurines like the Venus of Willendorf, or 43,000-year-old German flutes, show a culture of music and imagery. Flutes played recognizable scales. Drums of hide or hollowed logs filled evenings with sound. These were not luxuries but ways to teach, mark time, express identity. Healing was part of their world. Dental calculus shows medicinal herbs, while cave artists' human-animal hybrids may reflect shamanic visions. Conflict was rare. Violent injuries in skeletons are few, resource abundance easing tension. When it arose, it was likely brief, resolved by moving or talking, not war. Cooperation defined them, survival resting on unity. What can we learn? They were shapers, not victims. Aboriginal fire management in Australia, 65,000 years old, boosted biodiversity, a lesson in stewardship. Bought Dion. Their knowledge was vast: plants, animals, stone, weather, stars. A generalist's resilience, unlike our specialization. Their tools, simple yet elegant, hold the roots of our machines: leverage, sharpness, durability. Most deeply, they birthed symbolic thought. Cave art, music, figurines show a mind dreaming beyond the now. The spark of culture, writing, cities, science. The Paleolithic was no primitive struggle, but a triumph. For 99% of history, they balanced with the earth, their culture rich, population sustainable. They were innovators, artists, community, humans facing challenges with creativity. As we grapple with climate and scarcity, their resilience inspires. They hunted, gathered, crafted, built, shared, sang. They met the world with tools and stories, laying our foundations. Picture them not as brutes, but as scientists, artists, storytellers, people like us, giving all to a demanding world with grace. What do you think of their lives? How do they inspire you? Share your thoughts below. And if you loved this journey, hit subscribe for more stories of our past. Let's keep exploring together.